Hey everyone, it's Laura here from MakingCardsIsFun.com, and it's time for another Saturday STEM Day carding video. In today's video, I'm going to be creating a Halloween card using the Got Candy stamp and die cut set by Essentials by Ellen. I'm going to start out with a piece of washi tape. These are some washi sheets from Lifestyle Crafts and they are called Shape and Tape. I got the black version and I'm using the polka dot piece of washi paper. So I'm trying to peel off that backer sheet, and once I have it off, I can easily line up that piece of washi tape or paper with my white piece of cardstock. And to line that up straight, I am using the backer sheet, so I'm just pulling that and then I can easily adhere the piece of washi tape on there. So I'm going to cut off that piece and then I can save that for a future project. And then I'm just folding over the edge that is hanging off. You could also just cut that off with your scissors. I'm just cutting off 1/4 inch of that piece of white cardstock. So it measures 4 inch by 5.5. I cut this paper out of some Simon Says Stamp Ultra Heavyweight white cardstock since I will be doing some Copic coloring. So I wanted to create the look of Dimension, but I didn't want to use a lot of foam adhesive, so instead I'm doing some masking. I'm stamping the images from the Got Candy stamp set onto some masking paper, and I'm going to cut out those masks with my scissors. You could also use the coordinating die cuts, but then you would have a white edge around your pumpkins, and I didn't want a white edge since I'm going to be masking. If you don't have masking paper, then you can also use some printer paper and some removable adhesive. So to create this scene, I'm going to stamp the 2 pumpkins first, and then I'm going to put on my masks. So these are the 2 pumpkins that will be standing in front of the image. So I'm just putting on those masks, and then I'm going to stamp the second pumpkin, or the second kind of pumpkin. So I'm going to stamp that one on top of those masks, and then when I remove those masks, it will look like that pumpkin is behind the other 2 ones in front. So I'm just removing those. You can also use your tweezers to remove that. I'm using some Simon Says Stamp masking paper, by the way, but Eclipse has some masking paper, Inkadinkado has some masking paper as well. There are really a lot of possibilities out there. Then I put the mask on that pumpkin again because I wanted to stamp some more candy, and I'm going to stamp some more candy in the left corner as well. For the candy, I am using the Elf stamp set by Essentials by Ellen, since this is a Halloween card and I needed some Halloween candy to go with it. I also stamped a spider on there. Then I will be doing some Copic coloring. I'm doing some very simple coloring. I am just using 3 markers for each image. I'm starting out with the lightest color, which is Y19, and I'm going to color the entire image with that color. Then next I like to use the darkest color, and I'm just going around the edges of that pumpkin to give it some shading. So I'm going to put that around these edges, and then I'm blending that darkest color and the lightest color together with the YR24, and I'm moving my brush tip upwards and downwards just to blend that all nicely together. Then when I finish blending that together, I am going back in with the YR27, so that's my darkest color, and I'm just going in here and there to add a little bit of extra shading. This is a little trick that I learned from Jennifer McGuire, and it definitely helps to give your images more of a pop of shading. So that darkest color will still blend a little bit because your image is still kind of saturated with ink from the colors that I used before. So then for the stem of that pumpkin, I am using YG23 and YG27, so I'm using the lightest color and the darkest color, and I'm using the lightest color again to blend it together. Then for the candy, I am using V01. This is a really nice and light soft purple or violet color. And then for the shading, I am using V05. This is a darker color, so I'm just going to add that to the center of that little candy, so it gets a little bit more of a pop. Then for the pink color, I am using RV0000 and RV11. These are my 2 favorite pink Copic markers because these are just like really light markers, and they kind of look like pastel colors, and you all probably know that I love my pastel colors, so that's why I like to use that combination quite often. Now for the candy corn, I am using Y13 to add the yellow piece, and then for the orange piece I am going to use YR18. So I'm just using one marker for that little image since it's just such a tiny little image. After I Copic colored, I am going to use the Got Candy stamp set from Essentials by Ellen again, and I'm using that little ghost over there. So I'm stamping the ghost with some Memento Tuxedo Black ink onto some white cardstock, and I'm going to Copic color that ghost as well. I just want a really light gray wash of color on that ghost, so I'm using the NO marker, and then I'm going to blend that out with the colorless blender because I wanted it more to look like a shadow instead of like a gray ghost. After I Copic color that image, I used the coordinating die cut to cut out the ghost because I wanted a white edge around it, but you could also just fuzzy cut that if you would like to. I'm also going to stamp that ghost one more time onto the paper since I wanted that black little shadow thingy over there. And then I mounted that ghost onto the card using some foam adhesive. I wanted a pink speech bubble, so I'm using the baby pink ink from Umbrella Crafts because I didn't have any cardstock in that color. So I'm just going to swipe down that ink pad onto some white Neenah cardstock, and I'm heat setting that because I will be doing some heat embossing, and I want to make sure that that pink ink is completely dry. So I used the speech bubble die from the Got Candy die cut set from Essentials by Ellen, and then I'm figuring out which sentiment I should use. I decided to use the Boo greeting, and I'm going to stamp that on that speech bubble using Versamark ink since I'll be doing some heat embossing. I'm using my favorite white embossing powder. This is the Opaque Bright White embossing powder from WOW. So I sprinkle that on, and then I'm just tapping off the excess powder, and I'm heat setting that with my heat tool. After I did that, I just mounted that speech bubble onto the card using some foam adhesive, and then I thought the card looked pretty plain, so I'll be adding some sequins later in the video. But first I'm going to adhere a piece of silver glitter paper on this card, and I'm also adhering that colored piece onto the card just using my ATG because I wanted to keep it pretty flat. Also adding a little bit of glitter using the Clear Wink of Stella glitter pen. I'm adding a couple of coats of that pen so it has a nice shimmer finish, and then of course I'm adding a couple of sequins from the Ton. So I'm just using some of their mixes and some of their individual colors as well. And then finally I also added some glossy accents onto the candy, but I didn't do that on camera. But you can see the shimmer and dimension over here. So that finishes up my card for this week's Saturday Stamp Day card and video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back on Monday. See you then. Bye bye.